Why Wuthering Waves will flourish in the gacha space. Now, I've talked about this at length, but I am curious what other creators like gachasmack think.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to take the time to talk with you guys about why I think Wuthering Waves is going to succeed, flourish, and blossom in the gacha space.
To me, it comes down to Wuthering Waves is attempting to give players of the gacha space what they've wanted for years that other developers are not giving them. Okay, they're giving them good combat, they're giving them an open world, they're giving them good... Oh, yeah, thank you so much. They're giving them cool character designs, and they're making the game fun. So essentially, it's delivering on false promises and things that they were told they wouldn't like or might cause anxiety, and they're delivering that all into one game.
I don't think it's going to be a Genshin Killer, and I don't think it needs to be a Genshin Killer.
I don't think it's going to kill Genshin. They're doing that well enough on their own, but it will be a Genshin alternative, and you cannot deny that.
It just needs to find a place for the game that they're trying to deliver, and that's what I want to talk to you guys about. There's a number of reasons why I believe it's just going to kill it, but let's first start off with...
Not kill Genshin. He's not being contradictive. He's saying kill it as in do well, not kill it as in Genshin.
Reason number one, the Souls genre and Monster Hunter. This is a Wuthering Waves video, but I need you to understand this first.
Yep.
Monster Hunter World is Capcom's highest selling game of all time, and that's truly an incredible feat to achieve, given the big titles that Capcom has.
Yes, I understand what he's going to say, but understand that the Dark Souls community and the Monster Hunter community, they are incredibly niche. I would say Monster Hunter World is the biggest niche game that there is, right? As well as Souls.
Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, Devil May Cry. So many titles are under Capcom that are very successful IPs. But Monster Hunter started off as a very niche video game that not a lot of people knew about.
Yep.
And
I played Monster Hunter for well over 10-15 years before I saw anybody else talk about it. I had maybe one or two friends that also knew Monster Hunter. I knew nobody else.
The reason it is niche, as well as the Souls genre,
is because it's very hard and a lot of people don't want difficulty in their video games.
Is because the companies behind them that developed them understood the functionality of the game and who the audience it was intended to target.
Exactly. So what he's saying is the games weren't made for mass widespread appeal. They were made to appease a very specific amount of people and deliver on that platform very well. It's like a passion project, right? It wasn't meant to be a global phenomenon. It was supposed to be a little nice gift to people who wanted this specific thing. It's great.
Which is more so the hardcore gamer than the casual gamer.
Absolutely.
Now, casuals by default are a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of volume and sheer number of people when you compare them to a hardcore gamer, which is why a majority of companies today cater to the casual gamer. It's not rocket science.
Absolutely.
Way more numbers equals way more money made, or at least the potential to make more money.
Absolutely. And also the other thing why we're leaning to more casual games is because when we originally started, video games were marketed for kids. Those kids have grown up. Those kids now have like paying jobs, or they have to do more things with their life. So a lot of those original hardcore gamers, and we are getting a new younger audience, but we need casual games to supply every life, where hardcore games only supply one type of life, which is the only thing these people do are video games. But as people grow older, they have less and less time. So casual games are very good to fill that niche.
But there are scenarios where you can have a hardcore audience targeted video game and make ridiculously loads of money. One game that comes to mind is Lost Ark. Lost Ark did not have a big player base, but what it did have is a loyal, hardcore, sweaty gamer player base who spent tons of money.
Same thing with PGR.
On that pay-to-win MMO. But getting back to the topic.
Dude, Lost Ark should have been so good, and it just wasn't, man. Like, bro, that game flopped so hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie, man. That gear RNG improvement system, what the fuck were they thinking? And you know what the worst thing is? They had so much time to iron out that shit and make the client more Western friendly, and they just did it because the game released in Japan way earlier. Like, I don't know how they flopped so hard with that game. And the worst thing is, that game was one of my favorite games when it came out. But god damn did they not deliver on what they were saying they were going to.
Monster Hunter and Souls do one thing better than every other genre out there in the gaming industry. And that is deliver exhilarating boss fights and combat. Fights that make you hold your breath. Fights that make you have to do them repetitively just to...
Well, repetitively if you're bad.
memorize the patterns, find the weaknesses and openings of the monster to deal some damage.
So I think Monster Hunter World games are a little bit more deep than that, because I actually don't think you need to bang your head against the wall learning the mechanics like you do for Dark Souls. Let's be real, there are some Dark Souls fights that are complete fucking bullshit, but a lot of the monsters in Monster Hunter games are actually designed to where you can actually read their body language and understand what they're about to do. One of the fights that I like to reference for that is 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪, if you get hit in that fight and you die, that's not because the fight's hard, it's because you're bad and you're not paying attention, because 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗪 choreographs every single one of his moves in advance to where if you are observing how that monster is moving, you will know where to go. Genuinely, they have done such a beautiful job of crafting every single monster to where the abilities they use make sense in a very nice way. Now, I will say people who do more aggressive playstyles don't understand that, but if you just take a step back, you observe the monster for a little bit, and then you go in, you're great, right? Learn how and to the point, gachasmack is saying something adjacent to what I'm saying. But if you really pay attention to how the monsters move, you have a pretty damn good chance of beating it on your first try.
What I think they have figured out more than everyone else.
A lot of soul bosses are like that too, but let's just be real, guys. There are some souls bosses that are bullshit. And the biggest issue with that is hit delayers. Dark Souls and Elden Ring do a lot of hit delay. Normal creatures they just don't attack like that. Okay, nobody goes to punch you like this. Right? They go at worst case scenario, or majorly just that. Nobody goes, right? It's just fucking irritating, right? Hit delay is the biggest artificial difficulty mechanic in any Souls games. And don't get me wrong, I love Souls games, but hit delay is bullshit.
Else is they understand how crucial and paramount it is to get down the balancing aspect of combat, and the balancing variables are going to be punishing versus rewarding. Monster Hunter and Dark Souls both have a higher punishing ratio than they have a rewarding ratio, which makes you appreciate the reward, which is generally the combos that you want to do without the monster beating your ass or the enemy beating your ass. So they have this down to a T. But one thing I can say that Souls genre does better than Monster Hunter is boss fights. Their boss fights are much more exhilarating, intense, and nail biting, whereas Monster Hunter, it just delivers it a notch under them. But what it does better than the Souls genre is it gives you a much more complex and mechanically intricate combat system with the characters and weapon classes that you're utilizing.
I just jump up and I hit him.
I think Monster Hunter overall has a better combat experience than Souls, in my personal opinion. And I understand the two audiences are strong by the genres that they love, but I think Monster Hunter has a more balanced combat system than the Souls genre does. And we're gonna tie all this into Wuthering Waves here in a bit. I just need you guys to understand the psychology.
Let's just agree to disagree and just admit that they're both great,
as well as why these games succeed.
Who's to say which one's
which
objectively
game does
better?
what better? One simple fact still remains. It's the fact that both of these genres, the hunting genre, which was literally single-handedly defined by Monster Hunter, and the Souls genre, they both aren't afraid to take the monumental risk of not catering to a casual. Now, what they do is they do put tools and resources in their games that a casual player can utilize to get through the fights and make the fights beatable.
Exactly. For Dark Souls, you can just grind and over-level fights, and then for Monster Hunter, you can use things like the defender weapons or also grind and, trivialize fights. So essentially, Dark Souls can be a casual game if you play it like a casual game. Like, for example, there was a guy who used 𝗧𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗠's build for Dark Souls, and in case you guys don't know, 𝗧𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗠 overlevels the fuck out of a lot of Dark Souls games, which is fine. That's the way he likes to play. He goes like big, thick boy and just hits him, right? A guy used his build to beat the entire game without ever taking a hit, right? So if you do want an easier experience, all you have to do is grind. You truly get to cater what your experience is. That's why, for example, when I play Wuthering Waves, I'm going to be keeping certain characters at level 1 because I do want to beat every fight in the game while using a character at level 1. I think that'll be very, very, very funny, right? But when I just want to grind it, I use my level 90 characters and I knock them out of the park. I will choose how I want to play. I don't need the developers to dictate that for me.
But they do not compromise.
I don't need the developers to dictate that for me.
The functionality of their game as well as the challenge challenge of their game. They will not, you know, diminish the challenge of the boss fight, nor will they diminish the complexity of the classes and what you're supposed to be doing in the game.
Also, Wailing and Wuthering Waves, to your point, is 1,000,000% going to be pointless. Like, it's like, well, okay, well, it's not pointless. If you want the game to be casual, spend money. If you want the game to be hardcore, be free to play, right? That's essentially what it's going to come down to.
But they will say things like, for Monster Hunter, for example, here's a trap tool. Okay, here's a flash pod. Here's multiplayer, so you can play with other people. But they're not going to make the fights easier. They're not going to cater to the casual. They're going to cater to the hardcore gamer. Doing this risks the failure of your game because you're already like telling that audience to go play something else without having to say so. But generally, when you stay true to the functionality of your game, what happens is a refinement and a polish of that functionality becomes incredibly vivid. And over time, a good reputation builds up on you and what gamers can expect from you. And the casual ends up coming over to the game anyways because everybody unanimously praises that game.
Yep.
Now, when I come back to Wuthering Waves,
when you build up a community that trusts you, people will come because they'll say, wow, that's different. I mean, the majority of big-time game developers these days have some amount of controversy to them. It's actually insane, i.e. Pokemon, i.e. Hoyoverse, right? But when a company makes a game for a specific niche and they deliver that niche and they respect that niche, more people will come because gamers just want to be respected. And they want a game that they know the developers love just as much as they do.
the first variable, which was a very lengthy discussion, I believe it's going to be successful, is because their predecessor, which is Punishing Gray Raven, Kudo Games' previous title, which is still playable. I've heard
It's still playable, but never marketed, so nobody knows what the f it is.
Nobody say this game's combat sucks or this game's challenge, the boss fights. I've heard unanimous praise damn near about this game, but nobody knows about it.
Yep.
And it had terrible exposure, and many people go around saying that it has that they just didn't market the game well enough.
Exactly. Kuro Game is the best game developer with the worst marketing for gacha games.
Regardless of what it may be, one thing is for sure. This game delivered on boss fights, it delivered on combat. And because of this, everyone knows that their next game, which is Wuthering Waves, is going to deliver on the same thing.
Absolutely.
The reputation has been built. The entire community loves the game. The only reason that PGR failed, which, you know, y'all can make the argument that it didn't, but to be honest with you, if it didn't capture the Western audience, then it failed. But it actually failed.
That's going to upset a lot of people to hear, but I'm sure everybody who plays PGR knows and understands that it should have been far more successful than what it is, and the amount of revenue it earns far pales what it could have been with proper marketing and advertising. It should have been a much bigger game, but Kuro Games 1,000,000% dropped the ball on marketing. I will say they're doing a fucking fantastic job with marketing for Wuthering Waves, and I think that is going to be a huge hit.
Because nobody knew about the game didn't get enough exposure. You will hear all kinds of people say those exact same words. But people are now trying to put that same standard on Wuthering Waves. Oh, it doesn't get enough exposure. Kudo Games doesn't know how to market their game. After looking at the development phases prior to Wuthering Waves' release, after looking at the whole thing retroactively, I can honestly say anybody who's saying this is just wrong, objectively. Because everyone knows about Wuthering Waves.
Yep.
Which is not what happened with PGR.
Yeah, they're trying to say that PGR and Wuthering Waves are the same game. They're not. They've been doing an excellent job marketing for Wuthering Waves, as of now.
If you ask anybody in this gacha space who really knows gacha games, everybody knows about Wuthering Waves. Every person is talking about Wuthering Waves.
Yep.
And the other thing is, the big names in the space that stream and have a large audience, they know about Wuthering Waves, and they're gonna play it upon release.
And the other really thing that's great about Wuthering Waves is that a bunch of disgruntled hardcore Genshin players, because that's going to be the majority of the player base, is going to be Genshin veterans coming over, right? The Genshin player base crossover is going to be insane for Wuthering Waves, okay? Because disgruntled Genshin players, that's going to be filling it up massively. Like, oh, a game where we can actually play the combat? God damn. And I guarantee you, if content creators get the same amount of views or near comparable amount of views on Wuthering Waves than they did on Genshin Impact, we're going to be seeing a lot more players and a lot more content creators saying, man, Genshin Impact sucks balls, when their opinion isn't dictated by how much money they need in their wallet.
up Tower of Fantasy when I was streaming talking about this category because I wanted people to understand that when Tower of Fantasy released, it had over 1 million viewers in the Twitch category, a massive amount of viewers. And what I found
Wait, what'd you say?
Million viewers in the Twitch category. Understand that when Tower of Fantasy released, it had over 1 million viewers in the Twitch category.
Yeah, you know what else is insane? Do you know who the #1 Tower of Fantasy streamer was for the first 2 days? My ass. So here we go. Max viewers August 2022, and the game in the middle is Tower of Fantasy. I had 36,588 viewers the first day Tower of Fantasy came out, as well as following the second day with 30,000 viewers. And then, well, unfortunately, I'm a much smaller channel, and then 𝗧𝗪𝗜 took over, and even he was still getting views. And then, by that time, we all realized, wait a minute, the game is shit. And it went from 30,000 viewers to maybe 4,000 within a day, with how many problems there were for that game on launch. Actually insanity.
A massive amount of viewers. And what I found fascinating about this is that when Tower of Fantasy released, it had the worst goddamn publicity out of all the gacha games. Nobody was talking about this game in a positive manner. Everyone was shitting on it.
Yes, but before it came out, it's the Genshin Killer! It's the Genshin Killer! Everybody was just hoping to God the game killed Genshin.
Because they ended up, stealing some other IPs like animations word for word. They have bad reputation.
Yep.
It had a horrible reputation upon its release, and it had over 1 million viewers waiting to play the game because it was marketed as the Genshin Killer, and people by nature still want to try the next gacha game that could be a good gacha game.
Yep.
I bring this up because I think Wuthering Waves has to the contrary, has amazing reputation, and everyone's saying nothing but good stuff about this company. They're saying they deserve more, deserve praise, more attention. So when it releases, I think it's going to have an even bigger release than what Tower of Fantasy had, and it's actually going to deliver.
I don't think that it will. I don't think it'll have a bigger release than Tower of Fantasy because there was a certain hype because Tower of Fantasy was the first Genshin Killer, and that got a lot of people talking. I think this game is a lot more niche than that. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'm happy. But I think we'll probably maybe see, if we're lucky, maybe 300,000 people on day one. We'll see. But the first Genshin Killer had a huge buff. I don't know if we're going to be able to recapture that magic, but we'll see. Plus, not to mention, Genshin was way more popular than then. Was a lot more popular then. So that also gave TOF a buff. I'll be real, Genshin now is not nearly as relevant as it was back in August 2022. So that also hinders Wuthering Waves with how much more unsuccessful Genshin is now than it was.
On what people were expecting it to deliver on, which is exhilarating boss fights, challenge, and good combat. And that's the focus of what Wuthering Waves is, and I actually think they're willing to take the same risk.
I'm not sure if COVID-19 was still a factor in 2022. I don't believe it was.
Yes, that Souls games and Monster Hunter does, which is not cater to the casual and cater to the sweaty gamer.
Yep.
And what this is going to do is it's not going to kill Genshin. It's just going to allow them to find a space in the genre where they are doing something that is uniquely exclusive to their game, which is deliver a challenge and deliver boss fights. What makes Souls games and Monster Hunter games attractive is no one cares about the goddamn story. They care about the fight and the bosses. That's all. That's the core component.
Well, okay. I would say, yeah. People don't give a fuck about Monster Hunter World story. Dark Souls lore is pretty gas, as well as the story of Ronnie. I thought it was actually quite good. I did genuinely care about Ronnie's story for me.
Of those games. And I mentioned this before as well on stream. I said that the story in Monster Hunter is dog water. Nobody plays a Monster Hunter game for the story.
True.
The story in Elden Ring is damn good, top of the line story.
Yep.
But it's only for big brain 5 billion IQ people who pay attention. Let's be honest. The majority of people that play Elden Ring, they don't know what the is going on in Elden Ring with regards to the story.
Yeah, that's why I get on YouTube to explain that to me. Any potters? I had no clue. Like, there was this like charred corpse at the top of this tower that I had no idea what the fuck it was, but apparently she was like the bride of some motherfucker that got scorched, and then some bad happened, or like how Millennia was giving Radon like scarlet rot, or that like Radon was holding up the stars. Like, nobody knew that shit. Anyways, no, it's Ronnie's corpse. Yeah, that one. Who knows? It's complicated.
And they're not playing the game for that. They're playing it for what I just told you. So I've heard people say that if Wuthering Waves doesn't have a good story, it's going to die. And I couldn't disagree more, because you are trying to compare to Wuthering Waves to what Genshin did to succeed, which that's a whole nother argument in and of itself.
True. I will say, if Wuthering Waves doesn't have a good story, it won't die, but it will alienate and not deliver to a specific community that would play it simply for the story. And I would say making a good story is probably easier than, or at least by Gacha gamer standards. Oh my God, they will take anything for these fucking stories, bro. Oh my God. All you do is you make one person die and they're like, oh my God, it was so heartbreaking. Hey, like legit. Gacha game storytelling is so bottom of the barrel. They should at least deliver a passable fucking story, okay? And some people will actually like pay attention to it for that. Okay, so it's not gonna kill it, but it would isolate a community that would not want to participate with it if the story does not deliver.
But Wuthering Waves doesn't need a good story, just like Monster Hunter and Souls games don't need a good story. It needs good boss fights that are going to be uniquely exclusive. And they need to come in abundance. Each boss fight needs to leave a memory in your head where you want to go back to it for that unique and exclusive experience. They all have a unique identity to them.
So the reason why this is really hard to attain is because Elden Ring, Monster Hunter games, and Dark Souls games, you play once and then you're done. What Wuthering Waves is setting up to do is to create a gacha game that is living and breathing and updated very frequently throughout the year. At least 10 to 11 times throughout the year. So that's why it is good to deliver on a story for more casual players, because once you play this game and you beat all current content, you are going to go casual mode. So it is important to have a way to still enjoy the game casually during the casual moments.
That's why Monster Hunter and Souls games are also so fun. You could walk yourself through boss fights of each genre and be like, oh my God, that fight's fun. I want to go back and do that fight again. Yeah. Wuthering Waves needs to do that and focus on that. And they will, because they already have the reputation
100%,
for it.
They will.
When I think about Monster Hunter, I think about 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗖𝗛. I think about 𝗪𝗧𝗪𝗓. I think about Nergigante,
Nergigante.
I think about, hell, who else comes to my head?
Brachydios lit. Glavenus lit. Alteron, Barioth is okay. Punchy Boy, yeah, Brachydios. Yeah, Rajang. Oh my God, Rajang. Yeah, Narga Kuga. Monster Hunter World, Glavenus is garbage. Shut your fucking mouth up.
Kushala Deora, Teostra, you name them. All these fights have patterns, music, and intensities that separate them from the other fights. You know, if you go into Monster Hunter Rise, Gore Magala and Magna Malo are some of the coolest fights.
Yep.
Valstrax and hell, I'm just showboating my Monster Hunter knowledge at this point. You get my point though. And
you know, my problem is I know what every Monster Hunter World mob looks like, but I don't remember their name for the life of me. It's so goddamn hard.
Into Elden Ring and all the other Souls games, you could think of the fights as well. I think what's the
name of the stupid fucking bird with the pot? What's his name? That fucking guy? The pot bird. Yeah, Kulu Yaku. Them John's lame as and you know what's crazy? They're so lame that I love them. The Kulu Yaku is such a desperate, miserable, pathetic piece of shit, and that makes me love him. Same thing with the Dodo Gama. Just some cute fat It's like me. I love it.
Wuthering Waves is actually going to deliver a similar experience to them, where every fight is just as exhilarating and defining. And nobody else in the gacha genre is doing this. Everyone else is doing the greed move that a lot of gacha games do, and they're catering to a casual. And the best example of this is Genshin Impact.
Absolutely.
They will always cater to the casual. Why? Because that's where most of the money is and the easiest way to make the money. Which leads me to my next point for Wuthering Waves. They will not succeed if they over cater to the casual. They have to understand that the same thing that made Monster Hunter and Soul successful.
Over cater, yeah, I can agree. I think they can still cater to casuals in some regards, but just not for the hardcore combat. I think it is probably good to make a mode where dumb can play casually, because at the end of the day, and I'm not sure if gachasmack's remembering this, it's going to be played on a phone. It's very hard to play a game on a phone hardcore. So there needs to be a way where players who suck can still win, whether that be like over leveling or, you know, whatever may have you.
They have to follow that same structure and protocol.
You can't over cater to either side.
You will not cater to the casual, but what you will do
healthy balance,
is provide tools and resources inside of your game that the casual can utilize to make the game beatable.
Yep, there it is.
While not compromising that functionality of it. If they do this, I think there's no reason that they won't succeed.
Absolutely.
They don't need the large, abundant audience of Hoyoverse. They don't need the large, abundant audience of the casuals.
That being said, it sure would be nice, wouldn't it? It sure would be nice. And I don't think Kuro Games is just going to turn down money for the sake of turning down money. They just add in a couple extra features to make it a little bit more ease of access for mobile players and casual players.
They just need 1/10 of that audience. So if they have 10 million players, Kudo should only need 1 million players. And if they have the 1 million players, they will blossom and flourish, because those 1 million sweaty hardcore gamers, when you give them something that is worth their time, they will definitely reward you and stick around for a very long time.
Absolutely.
And with all of that being
player trust and consumer trust is the most important thing for any company
said, the last thing I want to talk to you about is what else do they need to do to be successful? Well, I think they just need to capitalize on all the little things that people convince themselves are big things.
So here's what they need to do. Number one, they need to be tossing out sponsors out the ass. Number two, they need to have drops on launch. Number three, they need to fly out more creators to take them behind the scenes to get them talking organically about their game. Number four, they need to keep players in the loop with developer talks. Number five, a roadmap would be absolutely fantastic so players know what to expect. Number six, they need to deliver on all of their promises. And number seven, just give us good, rewarding combat and worlds that are worth exploring, and as well as a good story. That's a very forehead take, right? But the thing is, just make the game good. And then that's what they need to do, to be honest.
Graphics of the game, character design, drip of the character, the things that make the gacha genre what the gacha genre is. I also think they need to capitalize on music and boss fights. Music is one of the most underrated variables to making a good boss fight.
Yep.
But apart from that, exploration, right? Getting creative and finding ingenuity with your world design. And then the story, I genuinely think it's the same concept as the Souls and Hunting genre. You don't need a good story. You need good cutscenes. Anime, weeby, edgy cutscenes. Show off some fine ass anime bitches. Show off some badass anime dudes doing these super flashy moves and shumpo steps.
Yep.
You do that, and that replaces a story for a lot of people.
100%. And I would like to note, they already have been catering to the casual community by adding in shinies to the world exploration. They want players to explore their world, and adding in shinies will completely incentivize people to do exactly that. To walk around the world, enjoy the world they created, and actually reward them with something new that they can find each time they pass through each separate zone.
It just automatically convince themselves in their
I can't
brain,
wait to
like
shiny
these stimulations just pop off, and they start convincing themselves that the story is good just because they saw a flashy cutscene. It happens to the anime community all the time. But I think if they do all of these things that I just mentioned, while also offering a variety.
And I agree. Yeah, it's like the same thing with adding fire into Photoshop things. The anime community is like, oh, yeah, I suffered through this 6-hour story quest. I didn't like any of it, but the cutscene at the end was crazy, bro. It was worth it. It's worth it, bro. Play the game. Fuck no. I'm gonna go on YouTube and I'm gonna just pull it up.
Variety of weapon classes and play styles. They'll do just fine, and they're going to succeed. I look forward to this game's release.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to coming back to this video. I love making videos like this because if I end up being wrong, it's more content for me. I don't give a damn if I'm wrong or right. I'll just come back and be like, hey, shit, well, we missed what you want me to do, but I shot that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
I mean, that is true. To be honest, a lot of content creators worry way too much about being wrong, and then they go live on their stream. They're like, okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Okay, let me think. What if I say this, they'll say that. If I say this, they'll say that. Bro, just say what you mean. Say what you mean and mean what you say and then move fucking on with it, bro. Like, people are way too cerebral about this shit. It really ain't that deep. Just give your opinion because that's what people are there for. And if you're wrong, oh well. It's not that big a deal. Regardless, boys, gachasmack with another great video. Nobody's fucking surprised. Go check it out. Give them a like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching, boys. Appreciate the fuck out of y'all. See you on the next one. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing.